Hey, you made it. Thank you so much for stopping by to check out the third video in this new Proxmox series. As I just mentioned, this is the third video. This is in a playlist. So if you haven't got the first two videos of this playlist, I will have it linked in the video description so you can go check that out. But in the first video, we got Proxmox installed. In the second video, we got a Proxmox container template set up so we can deploy our other containers faster when we get to that point. And in this video, I want to touch on something we haven't really touched on before, and that is an SDN, or a software-defined network. This is something that's relatively new to the Proxmox family of products, I guess is the best way to say that. And I thought in this video, we would take a look at how to set up an SDN for whatever use case you might have for it. And I've got some ideas that we may talk about in upcoming videos, but aside from these weird little quirky one-offs, I don't see much of a use for myself using an SDN. So we're just going to do a very basic setup to kind of walk you through the steps of how to actually set up a software-defined network in Proxmox so that you can then attach containers to them and get them connected to the internet, that sort of thing. So thank you again for stopping by. And I think with that little intro out of the way, let's jump over to my desktop and take a look at getting a software-defined network configured and set up on Proxmox. Before we jump into actually creating the SDN, there are a couple of prerequisites that we'll need to make sure that we have in place first. So if we jump over to the SDN page over on the PVE docs here, and then again, this will be linked in the description as well. It says the software-defined network SDN feature of Proxmox VE enables the creation of virtual zones and networks, or VNets, and this functionality simplifies advanced networking configurations and multi-tenancy setup. That word doesn't click in my brain until I say it, and then it's fine. It's the weirdest thing. Anyway, so there's an introduction here, there's some history, there's a current status, and then we're going to get down into this installation area right here. Now, if you installed Proxmox 8.1 or newer, you don't need to do this SDN core step where we're going to do an apt update, and then we're going to install the PVE network Perl to make sure that all of this works. And we can actually check to make sure all of that is installed with a really simple command to start. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this file right here. And we're going to do that here in just a second. When we take a look at this file, if we see source/etc/interfaces.d/star, if we see that, we're good to go. If not, you'll just need to run these two commands up here first, and then we can jump into the rest of the setup and configuration of the SDN. So let's jump over to our Proxmox here. What we're going to do is click on our node name right here. Of course, mine is named ZimaProx. And what I want to do is next is click on the shell option right here. And then I'm going to do a cat, which is just going to basically show everything inside the file. I swear we're going to get there some point. There we go. Okay, so now we've done a cat and then that specific file, just so we can see the contents of that file without having to go navigate to it and open it. We can just look at it this way with the cat command. So at the bottom of this right here, we see source/etc/network/interfaces.d/star. That tells us that we're good to get started on installing the rest of the prerequisites for the SDN in Proxmox. So let's go ahead and do that next. So we're going to come back over to our software-defined network tab over here, and we're just going to run these three commands, and then we're going to run these two commands. We really only need to run the second one, but we're going to do a reboot. So let's just go ahead and do it real quick, get this knocked out, just so we can get the prerequisites out of the way. So we're going to do apt update, and that's fine. Interesting. Oh, it's because I didn't turn off the enterprise stuff. It's fine. And again, that's something that we can take a look at in another video as far as getting things tweaked a little bit for better user experience. That's not this video though. So the next thing we need to do after running the apt update is install DNS mask, which is apt install DNS mask. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to do a clear, oops. I can type like so. Are we sure we want to install? I'm just going to hit enter for yes. Cool. So now we have DNS mask installed, but now we need to tweak it just a little bit. Again, I'm going to do a clear just to kind of keep things up at the top of the screen instead of way down at the bottom. So the next thing we need to do is actually disable the default instance. So we're going to go ahead and do that with this command right here, which is the systemctl disable -- now DNS mask. So we're going to go ahead and just paste that in there with Control-Shift-V and hit enter. Cool. Now that's been done as well, so we're good to go. There. Sorry, I lied. I got ahead of myself. It hadn't completed, but we're good. We've done the thing that it asked us to do. So the next thing we can do is install the other prerequisite, which is this FRR or FR routing. And this is for advanced setups, but we're here. We may as well do it just so that it's out of the way. So we're going to do this. We're going to click copy. And then we're just going to go ahead and run this again right there in our terminal window and hit enter. Are you sure you want to continue? It's 22 megs. We're going to hit enter to say yes. Okay, so there we go. So it looks like all of this is good to go. So let's, just for the sake of making sure that everything is done correctly, let's go ahead and do a reboot. And then once we've rebooted, we'll come back and we'll jump into actually creating the SDN. And of course, I almost skipped this, but we're just going to do reboot now, like so. And we'll come back as soon as this is done rebooting. Okay, so here we are just a couple of minutes later. The system has rebooted, so we're going to go ahead and get logged back in and then create our SDN. Okay, so right over here, so we're in the Data Center tab right up here at the top left. That's where we want to be for this part of this setup. What we're going to do is come down here to where it says SDN. This may be closed. If it is, just click it. It'll open up. And then we're going to see zones, VNets, options, and IPAM. The first thing we're going to do is create a zone. That's our first step here. So we're going to click zones, and then up at the top, right up here where it says add, we're going to click that drop down. And like I said earlier in this video, we're going to do a simple setup. My words were chosen specifically because we're going to select the simple option right up here. And then we're going to give it a name. I'm going to call this TutNet, like so. The MTU, the nodes, you can adjust all of this as you need to for your setup. Like if you wanted to restrict, if, let's say you had multiple nodes available, maybe you had a cluster or something like that, you could restrict it to only be available for certain nodes if you needed to do that. You can set your MTU, your IPAM, you just leave that as PVE for right now. We don't need to change that. However, we do need to click advanced and make sure that automatic DHCP right here is checked. Once we've got that, we can click add. And of course, you can add your DNS server, your reverse DNS, your DNS zone. You can do all of that if you need to. But again, we're doing a very, very basic setup for this first SDN. So we've got our name, we've got our IPAM set to PVE, and we've got our automatic DHCP checked by checking the advanced box there. So we'll click add. Cool, right there is our TutNet zone. So the next thing we need to do is actually create a VNet. So we're going to click the option right below zones, and then we're going to come to VNets and click create. Again, I'm going to call this TutNet just because I don't have an answer better than that. And then you can give it an alias if you want. The zone, we're going to select TutNet for that. Tags and VLAN aware, completely up to you how you want to handle that. I'm not going to do anything with that for the sake of this very basic setup though. So I'm going to click create. And now we've got our zone created. We've got a VNet created. Now we need to create a subnet. So if we come over here to where it says subnets on the right side of the screen, we can click that as well. Oh, we need to click the actual name of our VNet, and then we can click create. That always gets me. So what we want to do now is give it a subnet IP address range, basically. And I'm going to do 10.10.10.1/24. And then I'm just going to grab that 10.10.10.1 and just paste that in there onto the gateway. Now, the next thing that we need to do is make sure that we check this SNAT or SNAT, whatever you want to call it there. Basically, that is source NAT. And this gives us the ability to still allow these containers that are on this SDN to still have internet access. If we don't check this box, they won't be able to connect to the internet in any capacity. So you want to make sure that you do check this box if you need your containers to have internet access. So we've got that SNAT or the SNAT created or checked there. The next thing we need to do is come over here to our DHCP ranges tab right up above, and then we're going to click add. And I'm actually just going to paste in our IP address there. I'm just going to change it from 1 to 50, and then I'll give it basically a start address of .50 and an end address of 100. You can manipulate this however you need to for whatever your networking needs are. But this is just what I'm going to go with for the sake of setting this up. So now we're going to click create. And so we can see that both of these say new next to them. And that's not going to do anything for us. That's not going to allow us to actually use this SDNet just yet. So what we're going to do next is actually come back to SDN right up here in this little column. And then we're just going to click apply. We're going to give this a second, and there it is. Now we've got our TutNet ZimaProx status pending. So that means it is still kind of doing some stuff in the background. We should be able to maybe see if there's anything going on there. Everything there looks good. And while I was looking at that, the status became available. So now let's make sure that we can actually connect a VM or a container to our new software-defined network. So what we're going to do to make that happen is we're going to come over here to our node name. And in my case, it's ZimaProx. And then right here, of course, we've got all of the stuff available under here, including the template that we created. Actually, we should talk about that briefly. In our previous video, actually, we took a look at setting up kind of container templates with the script that I had demonstrated earlier that I had put together that basically installs sudo and Docker Compose and creates a sudo user and installs Portainer or Dockage or whatever. In that video, somebody left in the comment section like, hey, why didn't you also add the user to the Docker group? And that was a thing that my brain just didn't even think about until it was brought up. So that's been fixed. When you create the user, it'll actually ask you to enter the password and then re-enter the password so that there's less likely a chance of screwing up the password when you're putting in your new user account. That's something I added to the most recent script. And I also made it so that the user you create will also be added not only to the sudo group, but also to the Docker group. So there should be fewer conflicts and permission issues, that sort of thing. So I do want to give a big shout out to the person who left that comment. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that. But since we're here, what we're going to do, I'm actually just going to go ahead. We're going to come back up to our data center, our node, and then I'm just going to right click and say clone. We're going to call this, we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to call this TutNet test, like so. And I'm going to click clone. We're going to give this a second to do its thing. We're not actually going to start it up just yet because I want to get it attached to the network. So once this is done cloning, we'll come back and take a look at what our next steps actually are. Okay, so it's been just a couple of minutes and our TutNet test has been created by cloning the template. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the container that we want to add to the network. Then we're going to come over here to the column in the middle and click network. And then we're going to click the network that's right here and then click edit. And then we're going to switch the bridge from VMBR0 to TutNet. All of the rest of this is fine. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. And now we can come up to console and click start. So we're going to give this a second to spin up and do its thing. But while we're waiting on that, we can actually come back to our data center right up here. And we can come up here over here to SDN. We're going to come down to the bottom where it says IPAM. We're going to click that. And right here, we can see that we've got our SDN listed out here with the zone, the zone, the VNet, the subnet, then our gateway IP, and the container ID and the IP address associated with it, along with a MAC address. All of that is listed out right here. So let's make sure that our container actually agrees with that. What we're going to do is come back over here to our container. We're going to click the container. Here is our console. I don't know where the root or the login for that, but we're going to go ahead and type in root and our password and hit enter. And right here, we can see that our IP address for our connection is 10.10.10.50. Again, let's verify that by coming over here to data center. IPAM 1234 is right there, and 10.10.10.50 is the IP address that it was given. So there's one last thing that we need to check, and that is to make sure that we can still gain access to the internet with it, or can connect to the internet with it. So let's do a ping google.com, and right there is our ping to google.com, showing us that we actually do have internet connectivity to this container, even though we're on a virtual network, an SDNet, a software-defined network, if I could find all of the right words or all of the different synonyms that we can use for this. But it shows that our network is working and we do have access to the internet with it. So, as I mentioned earlier in this video, I don't have much of a use case for software-defined networks in this capacity. I do have a little side project I want to try just to make sure it works, but it's kind of a, how to hide your Proxmox containers in plain sight on your network. But I would love to know from you guys kind of what your thoughts are on having an SDN set up in your Proxmox, what you would use it for. You guys have probably got better ideas about that than I do, and I would love to hear what your thoughts are on setting up a software-defined network in Proxmox. Would love to hear all of that in the comment section down below. Also, I will have kind of a write-up on this available over on my website that will also be linked in the description down below as well if you want to check that out. But I think that kind of covers everything I wanted to cover in this video. Again, I want to thank you guys for spending some of your day with me today. It really does mean a lot to me. If you want to support the channel, the two easiest and cheapest ways to do that is to like and subscribe. Of course, if you'd like to get ad-free access to my content, you can become a channel member or jump over to Patreon, where you can become a patron over there for as little as $1 a month. And those are probably the easiest ways to support the channel. So if you want to do that, cool. If not, totally get it. No obligation on any of it, even the free stuff. So I think with all that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Again, I want to thank you guys for spending a few minutes of your day with me today, and I'll talk to you in the next video.